Have you ever stood in a place and felt the air change? Not just a shift in the weather, but a fundamental change in reality itself. A moment where a single, whispered secret could unravel the world you thought you knew. This is a story about one of those moments. A story that begins not with a hero on a grand quest, but with the simple, heavy clink of coins on a dusty countertop. Imagine the scene, a general store in a forgotten corner of the frontier. The air is thick with the smell of leather and dried beans. A young man, Thomas Reed, places his payment down, 1 coin at a time. He's just bought a patch of land, every cent he's saved from years of backbreaking labor. And he shares his news with the quiet, proud smile of a man building a future. "My wife," he says, "is expecting our child." And the room freezes. The shopkeeper's face drains of all color, his eyes widening not with joy, but with pure, unadulterated horror. "You married," he whispers, the words tasting like ash, "that thing." Outside, the murmurs of the townspeople are no longer just curious whispers. They are sharp, angry, hardening into threats that hang in the air like a coming storm. Because the woman Thomas Reed married, the woman now carrying his child, is like no other. She is a being of legend, a figure from a forgotten age, standing 9 feet tall. And what she carries in her womb is something the world has never seen, something it may not be ready for. This is not just a story of a man and a woman. This is a story about the last echo of a dying race, the terrifying price of loneliness, and the defiant, impossible power of love. To understand how Thomas Reed ended up here, a pariah in a town that once barely knew his name, we have to go back to the beginning. His story was one of quiet sorrow. The war had taken his father and brother. His mother, lost in her own grief, had remarried and moved east, leaving him anchorless and alone at 17. For 5 years, he drifted from ranch to ranch, his hands growing calloused, his savings slowly growing, but his heart remaining empty. He wasn't searching for wealth or adventure, he was searching for a place to belong. A piece of land he could call his own. So, when he saved the final dollar, he went to the land agent and paid $60 for the old Henderson homestead, a place said to be abandoned, a place the agent was almost desperately eager to be rid of. Thomas, 22 years old and made of wiry muscle and stubborn hope, saw only potential. He guided his creaking wagon down the rutted path, the dust of the trail clinging to his clothes. As he crested the final ridge, the setting sun casting the world in gold, he saw it. And his breath caught in his chest. It wasn't the simple farmhouse he'd imagined. It was a massive, wooden structure, something ancient and in-between, its doors hanging open, groaning as they swayed in the wind. And from within, a sound drifted out that made the fine hairs on his arms stand on end. His hand went instinctively to the old Colt revolver his father had carried, a weapon he'd never fired at a living soul. The singing stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow louder, more menacing than the sound itself. Then, the doors of the structure burst open. And she emerged. She was impossible. 9 feet tall if she was an inch, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of the world and arms thick with corded muscle. A wild mane of copper hair fell in waves past her waist, and her eyes, a pale, clear green like water in a deep creek, fixed on him with an intensity that felt like a physical blow. She wore a simple dress of rough homespun, but it could not conceal the powerful, graceful curves of her body. Thomas stumbled backward, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. He was a man of the earth, a practical man, and this was a creature from a fireside tale. She stepped forward, and he felt the ground tremble faintly with each footfall. Yet, for all her immense size, she moved with a surreal, predatory grace. When she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder, resonant and deep. "You are the new owner." It wasn't a question. Thomas swallowed, his throat bone dry. "Yes, ma'am. I bought this land fair and square. Got the deed right here." Her lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "I know what you have. The question is, do you know what you have bought?" She gestured behind her to the looming structure. "This is not just land, little man. This is a place where the veil is thin. Where things happen that the world outside cannot explain. Trying to summon his courage, Thomas straightened his spine, forcing himself to meet her unnerving gaze. I don't know what you mean, ma'am. But this is my property now. If you've been living here, I suppose we can work something out until you find another place. She threw her head back and laughed, a sound like boulders tumbling down a mountainside. Oh, little man, I am not leaving. This place has been mine for longer than your grandfather has been dead. The deed means nothing here. What matters is strength. What matters is will. And what matters most, is need. She took another step, and he found himself rooted to the spot, paralyzed not by fear, but by a profound, unsettling fascination. She bent down, bringing her face level with his, so close he could feel the warmth of her breath. Her pale green eyes seemed to look straight through him, seeing all the lonely nights, all the silent prayers, all the hollow spaces inside him. You have the smell of loneliness on you, she said softly, and the accuracy of her words felt like a punch to his gut. The smell of a man who has spent too many nights reaching out in the dark and finding nothing. I know that smell well, little man. I have worn it myself. His face flushed. Who are you? What are you? She straightened up, and for a fleeting moment, a profound sadness flickered across her majestic features. As for what I am, that is a longer story. But you will learn it soon enough. She turned and walked back into the shadows of the structure, her footsteps echoing in the gathering dusk. You may sleep in the small house behind the barn tonight. Tomorrow, we will talk about the arrangement. Thomas wanted to shout, to protest, to wave his deed in the air and assert his rights. But the words died before they reached his lips. All his plans, all his dreams of a simple, quiet life, suddenly felt childish and fragile in the face of this reality. He was in a story now, a story much bigger than himself. That night, lying on a thin mattress in the small, dark house, he stared at the ceiling. Through the walls, he could hear her moving about, and soon, the singing began again. That same, haunting melody. And despite the terror, despite the sheer impossibility of his situation, he found himself listening, truly listening. There was a longing in that voice, a deep, aching need that resonated with the emptiness he had carried in his own chest for years. He had dreamed of a wife, children, a family. But now, those dreams seemed pale and insubstantial. What did she want from him? What was this arrangement? As he drifted into a troubled sleep, lulled by her otherworldly lullaby, Thomas Reed began to understand that his old life was already over. The morning brought a harsh, clear light, but no clarity. He saw her footprints in the dust, each one the size of his forearm, and knew it had not been a dream. Era was by a fire pit, stirring a large iron pot. In the daylight, he could see faint, intricate markings on her pale skin, like the rings of an ancient tree. She looked up as he approached, and he felt that strange pull again, as if he were a piece of iron and she his magnet. You slept poorly, she observed, ladling a thick porridge into a wooden bowl for him. He ate under her unwavering gaze, feeling like a specimen being studied. When he finished, she took the bowl, her fingers brushing his, and a jolt, like static electricity, passed through him. You want to know what I am, she said, settling onto a massive log. So, I will tell you. My people are old. Older than the tribes that hunted these plains before the white men came. We are the giants your kind have told stories about since you first learned to speak. Most of us are gone now, faded into legend. But some remain, hidden in places like this, where the land remembers what it was before. Why are you here? Thomas asked, his voice rough. On my land? Her expression hardened. This land chose me long before any deed was written. I came here 30 years ago, running from those who would have used me, displayed me, made me into a circus attraction. The man who owned this place before you, Henderson, he understood. We had an arrangement. He worked the land, and I protected it. In return, he left me in peace. 30 years. Thomas stared, bewildered. But you don't look. Time moves differently for my kind, she said, a weary note in her thunderous voice. I have seen 100 summers, little man, and I will see 100 more if I am lucky. 100 years. The sheer weight of that loneliness settled over Thomas. He had felt alone, yes, but the thought of a century of solitude was incomprehensible. So, what happens now? He asked. Now we make our own arrangement, Era replied. You may work this land. I will not interfere. But you will respect my space, and you will not speak of me to others. The world beyond these fences cannot know I exist. That seems fair enough, Thomas nodded. Is there anything else? She stood, towering over him once more, her eyes searching his face. He saw something new there now, a flicker of desperation, of raw, unspoken need. Yes, she said quietly. There is one more thing. But we will speak of it later, when you have had time to understand what you have truly found here. The days passed in a strange, new rhythm. Thomas worked the land, repairing fences, clearing brush, the physical labor a welcome anchor. But his mind never stopped churning. What was the one more thing? The question gnawed at him. That night, he got his answer. A knock came at his door, 3 sharp raps that shook the frame. He opened it to find Era silhouetted against the starlight, her hair flowing like liquid copper, her expression vulnerable, almost afraid. May I come in? She asked. In the cramped space of the house, her presence was overwhelming. She had to duck through the doorway, and when she sat on the floor, she still seemed to fill the entire room. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. About why I truly need you to stay. About what I need from you. Thomas sat, his mouth going dry. The air grew heavy with anticipation. My people, she said, we are dying out. Not from violence or disease, but from loneliness. We are so few, so scattered, that we rarely find each other. And when we do not breathe, when we do not continue our line, we fade. We become less real, until one day we are nothing but whispers and shadows. She looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw a depth of need that stole his breath. I have been alone for so long, little man. I have tried to be content with solitude. But I am tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of having no one to share the burden of these long years. And I am running out of time. Thomas's mind raced, trying to catch up. What are you saying? What do you want from me? Era reached out slowly, giving him every chance to pull away. Her massive, powerful hand settled on his shoulder with incredible gentleness. I need what your kind and mine have sometimes shared in the old days, when the world was younger. I need a companion. And I need. She paused, her cheeks coloring. I need a child. Someone to carry on when I am gone. Someone so I am not the last. The words hung in the air, immense and impossible. Thomas stared, his brain struggling to form a coherent thought. She was asking him to be, a partner. A father. To a giant. Era, he said slowly. I am just a man. A small man compared to you. How could we possibly? I mean, how would that even work? A sad smile touched her lips. There are ways, little man. My kind has lain with yours before, though rarely. It is not easy. It requires trust. Patience. Gentleness on my part. But it is possible. She withdrew her hand, looking away. I know this is much to ask. If you refuse, I will understand. You may still work this land. I will still keep you safe. But I had to ask, because the loneliness has become too great to bear. Thomas sat in stunned silence. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at him to run, to saddle his horse and never look back. But as he looked at her, at the proud, ancient being brought low by a simple, human need, he saw a reflection of his own soul. He understood that ache. And he knew, with a certainty that shocked him, that he could not add to her loneliness. He could not walk away. "Let me think," he said finally. "This is a lot to take in." She nodded. "Take the time you need. I have waited this long. A few more days will not break me." As she left, she paused at the door. "Thank you, Thomas Reed, for not laughing. For not running. That alone is more than I dared hope for." He lay awake all night, her haunting song weaving through his thoughts. And he realized his answer was already there, had been forming since the moment he first saw her emerge from the shadows. 2 days later, he walked to her door, his decision solid in his chest. "Era," he said. "I need to say something before I give you my answer. I came here looking for land. For a place to build something of my own. But I've realized I was looking for something else, too. Something I didn't have words for." He met her eyes. "I've been alone since I was 17. I thought that was just how life was. But I see that loneliness in you, too. And I think maybe this land brought us together because we both need something that only the other can give." He stepped closer. "I can't promise this will work. I can't promise I won't be afraid. But I can promise I will try. And I can promise that whatever happens, you will not face it alone anymore." Tears, great crystalline drops, welled in her pale green eyes. She sank to her knees, bringing herself to his level, and cupped his face in her enormous hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "Oh, thank you, little man." So began the most extraordinary courtship. Era led him to a hidden canyon, where a thermal spring bubbled up into a crystal-clear pool, steam rising into the morning air. "My people believe that water remembers," she told him. "When we enter the water with another, we allow them to see our truest selves." It was there, in the warm, embracing water, that they began to bridge the impossible gap between them. It was awkward and fumbling and required immense patience and trust. But it was also tender, and profound, and filled with a growing love that surprised them both. Weeks turned into a month, and Thomas woke one morning to find Era by the window, her hand on her belly, a radiant smile on her face. "I can feel it," she whispered. "I can feel them. A life, taking root." She was with child. Their child. Joy, however, was a fragile thing in a world ruled by fear. When Thomas rode into town for supplies, the general store fell silent. The shopkeeper, a man named Garrett, paled when Thomas confirmed he had a wife expecting a child. "You married that thing," the man hissed, and the threat in his voice was clear. The whispers had turned to open hostility. A woman named Sarah Brennan, a midwife with a kind heart, offered her help, a single beacon of decency in the growing storm. But men like Elias Cutter, a brute who hated anything different, began talking of dealing with the abomination on the Henderson property. Era knew what was coming. "I will not let our daughter grow up surrounded by violence," she told Thomas. "We need to leave." He hated to give up his dream, but he knew she was right. Their child deserved peace. As they prepared to depart, salvation came from an unexpected source. A band of Apache warriors, led by Chief White Cloud, who was a distant cousin to Era, appeared on the horizon. They had heard of her plight and the threats against her family. "You married one of the old ones," White Cloud told Thomas. "You gave her what her people could not. A child of the future. That makes you family. And family, we protect." They left their land behind and found a new home, a sanctuary among the tribe. There, their daughter was born. They named her Thera, which meant gift in Era's tongue. And she was a gift, a beautiful, powerful child, a blend of two worlds, with her mother's height and strength and her father's warm, brown eyes. Life in the tribe was not without its challenges, but it was a life of community and acceptance. Thera grew into a remarkable young woman, curious and kind. When she was 15, she asked the inevitable question. "Father," she said, Her eyes filled with tears after a trip to a nearby settlement. Am I a monster? Thomas knelt, his heart breaking. Who told you what you are? He asked. You and Mother. And what do we say you are? You say I'm a gift. That I am loved. That I am proof that different worlds can come together and make something beautiful. Thomas nodded. Then why do you listen to people who do not know you, who do not love you? They are afraid because you are different. Because you are strong. But different and strong are not the same as monster. Thera grew in confidence and wisdom. She eventually married, had children of her own, and carried the legacy of her parents forward. Thomas lived to be 60, a good, long life filled with a love he had never dared to imagine. When he lay dying, surround. You will never be alone, he whispered to Era. You have Thera. You have the tribe. And you have my love, which will not end just because my body does. He closed his eyes, a small man who had loved a giant, and proved that the size of a person's heart is the only measurement that truly matters. Era lived for many more years, watching her grandchildren grow. She visited Thomas's grave every day, on a hill under a strong, tall tree. And sometimes, in the wind, she could swear she heard his voice. I told you we were not alone anymore. The story of Thomas and Era became a legend among the tribe and beyond. A reminder that love recognizes no boundaries. That family is defined by choice, not similarity. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. It is the proof, written in the pages of a forgotten history, that sometimes the most impossible unions create the most extraordinary legacies, and that some loves are simply too powerful for this world to contain.